The Jerusalem Channel is made possible by viewer support. Thanks for watching.
From time to time, we invite intercessors from all over the world to a convocation to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. It's also an opportunity to meet with key Israelis, to have a briefing on what's really happening these days. And one of our favorite speakers, with inside information to share, is author and former spokesman for the Israel Defense Forces, Avi Lipkin. Avi was born in New York, but he immigrated to Israel at the age of 19. And today he's actively involved in the Israeli political scene. He has an ambition to unite Jews and Christians in the country into a single political party. And we want to share with you some of his insights and behind-the-scenes observations during our recent conference in Jerusalem's Old City.
So let's start first with something that you may or may not have heard. For those of you who have gone to Google search or YouTube's, I know among the 100 teachings more or less that are there, I have a teaching about something called the Dallas Council on World Affairs. How many people have heard of the Dallas Council on World Affairs teaching? 1, 2. I see 2 hands. Anyone else? Okay, 2 hands. And this is absolutely the most important testimony of all my testimonies. And it's usually the second testimony in any church that I speak in. The first testimony in any church that I speak in is the 5 deceptions of Islam. We don't have time for that tonight. So we're going to talk about the second message, which is about mammon. Mammon in English is mammon in Hebrew. Mammon means money. And I would not be surprised if the word money comes from the Hebrew mammon, mammon. The M and the N change. I started speaking in churches in November, December of 1990, which was the time of Desert Shield. If you remember, the Allies were all working together to prepare to expel Saddam Hussein from Kuwait. And I started speaking in churches, synagogues, radio, and TV. As an Israeli army spokesman, I knew exactly what was going to happen. I went home January, February, March of 1991 to Israel. The war broke out. We were hit with 39 Scuds, and only 1 person died from a direct hit. You tell me there's no God. This is living proof that God is in control and God exists. Some Christians later said to me, well, you know, 39 rockets and only 1 dead, that's 39 whippings, and 1 man died for it. Okay, I won't preach anymore, but you know, I get contaminated by being in so many churches, you know. But so be it. So anyway, so I come back to the United States in April of 1991, and all of a sudden everyone is saying, Avi's a prophet, Avi's a prophet. And I said, no, I'm not a prophet, I'm an Israeli army spokesman. I was debriefed by my commander, so I knew exactly what was going to happen with Desert Storm, and so it happened. In April of 1991, during that second trip, I get a frantic telephone call from a PR woman who was saying to me, Avi, get on the next plane from New York to Dallas. You're speaking tomorrow night before the Dallas Council on World Affairs. The Dallas Council on World Affairs is the Dallas equivalent branch of the Council on Foreign Relations. How many people heard of the Council on Foreign Relations? Now, I know you English people, God bless you, are not necessarily in the same crazy bunch that I move in, known as the Tea Parties and the American nationalists, but those are the people who control the world. And so I would say they would say to me, be careful, these people are not Christian. Their God is mammon. Their God is money. And so I would say to these Christians, you Christians are paranoid, but you know, you may be paranoid, but that does not mean they're not out to get you. So anyway, so I didn't know why they received me. In 1991, I hadn't even written my first book yet. I didn't have any books, any CDs, any DVDs, nothing. I had just left the Prime Minister's office of Yitzhak Shamir. I really had no title, wasn't a rabbi, wasn't a pastor, wasn't a general in the Israeli army, wasn't a professor, wasn't a member of Knesset yet. But they invited me, so they said, come the next day. Next day I took a flight to Dallas. And two very funny things happened. The first thing that happened was that I was a replacement speaker for no-show. Who was the no-show? Boris Yeltsin of Russia. Boris Yeltsin had been contracted to give 4 lectures. He gave 2, but he was an alcoholic and he had 1 drink and that was enough. He was on the next plane to a hospital in Russia. So the 3rd night was a washout. There was no speaker. And the 4th night, they needed a speaker, so they got me. So you see, God in heaven had to make Boris Yeltsin so drunk that the door would open for Avi Lipkin to come and speak. And the second funny part of the story is General Latham, retired, says to me, so tell me, sir, what's it like to be a general in the Israeli army? And I said, General? He says, aren't you General A. Lipkin, Chief of Staff of the Israeli army? And I said, no, I'm Lieutenant A. Lipkin of the Army Spokesman's Office. And I'm here to give you a lecture on Israeli military strategy. And so, you see, for people from Dallas, Amnon and Avi are one and the same. Because the chief of staff at the time was Amnon Lipkin. And I was Avi Lipkin. Anyway, God has a sense of humor. And I gave them a lecture, and it was so good they invited me back, actually. What was the lecture about? It was about why Israel must never withdraw from the Jordan River. In other words, this whole idea of handing over Judea and Samaria to a Palestinian state, so-called, is suicide for Israel. And it can never happen. Israeli leadership is sometimes very stupid, but we're not suicidal. There is no Israeli government that will withdraw from the Jordan River. And after I talk about ISIS, you'll understand why. Because ISIS very soon will have its black flags planted on the east side of the Jordan River. Very soon. Jordan will fall to ISIS. Saudi Arabia will fall to ISIS. ISIS is not defeated yet. ISIS may be contained in the north and the east. It's not defeated yet. I said withdrawal from the Golan is suicide. Praise the Lord that Israel did not hand over that little sliver of the Golan Heights that we still have. You can imagine ISIS on the banks of the Sea of Galilee. Okay. And then I said to them in 1991, we had not yet handed over Gaza. I said, and we should not hand over Gaza, because Gaza is critical for Israel's defense. And, Jews are supposed to be the smartest people in the world. Sometimes I think we're the stupidest people in the world, because we handed over Gaza, thinking we would have peace. There's a saying that insanity, the definition of insanity is when you keep making the same mistakes over and over again, thinking this time it's going to work. And we do have crazy people in this country in politics on the left who think that by handing over land to the Palestinians, so-called, that we will have peace. So even Jews sometimes make very big mistakes. The great thing is, man plans and God laughs. Okay. So I made my presentation. I said to them that UN resolutions 242 and 338 said that Israel will hand over land for peace, but Israel will negotiate with its Arab neighbors for borders which are secure, recognized, and defensible. As an Israeli Defense Forces spokesman, I said to them, withdrawing from any of these borders makes our defense posture indefensible. That's why Israel cannot hand over land. And we handed over Gaza. Did we get peace? I don't know if you know this, but last night they launched more rockets into Israel from Gaza. And the Israeli Air Force struck 4 times. I will say one thing. in all deference to Ariel Sharon. They were digging tunnels underneath our army bases, underneath our settlements in Gaza, and they were blowing them up with half a ton of dynamite under each site. They are fantastic at digging tunnels. And because the world would not allow Israel to do what Israel really needed to do in Gaza, so we were indefensible with these tunnels, these dynamite tunnels. So Israel withdrew from Gaza. So in that sense, maybe we had no choice. I'm saying, as an Israeli army spokesman, there is no politics in army decision-making. We look at what the Israeli army has to deal with, and we had to deal, and we couldn't deal with these tunnels. Okay. So UN resolutions 242 and 338 said, secure, recognized, and defensible borders, meaning we do not go back to the borders of June the 5th, 1967, which were indefensible. And Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State of the United States, said that those borders were Auschwitz extermination camp line borders, that we could not defend ourselves. So clearly, UN resolutions 242 and 338 were calling on Israel to have new borders which were secure, recognized, and defensible. We handed over Sinai a third time to Egypt. That's 91% of the land. We handed over half the Golan to Syria. That's 2%. That's 93%. That was of that night. After that, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, rest in peace, handed over land. No, I say it truly. He, rest in peace, he was a great man. He handed over land to King Hussein. And we've had peace with Jordan ever since. I don't know if this was in the news today. I don't know if you can imagine. Jordan has 2 million Syrian refugees. The fourth biggest city in Jordan today is a Syrian refugee camp. And you know who provides the water for these 2 million Syrians? Israel. Israel is pumping and pumping water from the Sea of Galilee to give this water to the Syrian refugees living in Jordan. So Jordan, Egypt, for different reasons, are maintaining the peace with the state of Israel. So after I finished my message, the 200 people in the room listened intently. Many of them were Arab oil potentates living in Dallas. And they said to me, Avi, you're a good speaker for Israel. You know why? Because you don't speak with a funny Israeli accent. We understand everything you're trying to say to us. And they said to me, we here in Dallas don't like funny accents. We don't like Russian accent of Boris Yeltsin or Arab accent from the Arab princes, and we don't like Jewish accents of Shamir and the Israeli politicians, and we don't like Queen's English from Oxford. And you speak like a Yankee from New York, which is true. But you speak clear English. So you're a good speaker for Israel, but you know what your problem is? You don't understand realities. Reality number one is that Israel is all alone. America is not your ally anymore. Now remember, this is April 1991. This is during George Herbert Walker Bush as president. You're going to make peace with the Arabs whether you like it or not, and you're going to give them all the land, 100% of the land. We don't even care about UN resolutions 242 and 338. Number two, and this is the punchline of my entire message tonight, you have to understand there's only one thing that made America great, and that's the barrel of oil. The steady price of oil, the steady supply of oil, and we won't let the Jews get in the way of that. Is that clear? That's what they said to me. And it was a complete shock to me. And I was in such shock I couldn't even answer. Sitting next to me that night were two Christian couples from Dallas, and one of them was my host, Eric Gustafson. He got me onto Zola Levitt, Marlon Maddox, different Christian radio and TV programs. And he was shaking like a tuning fork when he heard this, that what made America great was the barrel of oil. And he got up and he looked at these people in the room. He said, you call yourselves Christians? Because these people were all dressed tie and jacket like they're the Sunday best. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Because what made America great was not the barrel of oil. What made America great was Jesus Christ. I mean, I was in total shock. And this man sliced the air in that room with a knife. That's how thick the spiritual battle was between the Mammon people of the Council on Foreign Relations and the 4 Christians and myself who are united opposing them. And I want to tell you something. I don't know how many of you know anything about me, but when I came to this country 47 years ago, I did not like Christians. I had been taught about what the Catholics did to us in the Inquisitions and the expulsions. I was taught about what the Russians did to us in the pogroms and communism, what the Nazis did to us. And even the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants in the United States would kill us, we were told in Hebrew school. One day the Jews would be killed in America. The Jews will be killed in America, but not by the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. They will be killed by ISIS. ISIS is pouring into all these countries. So we're going to talk about that. But that night, the lights went on, because I understood. There are one of 2 Americans. There is a Christian and there is a Mammon. Those who believe in Mammon hate Christians, hate Jews, hate Israel, hate the Judeo-Christian values that made America great. And that night, April 1991, I had to take a choice. Either I'm with the Christians or I'm with the anti-Christians. And you all know what the anti-Christians did to the Jews in World War II. You know, there was a movie, I don't know if you remember, General Patton. That was an outrageous movie. It's my favorite movie, by the way. Patton could have made it to Berlin in January of 1945. The war could have been ended 5 months earlier. But Eisenhower said no, because there was a deal from Yalta and Potsdam with the Russians. Had the war ended in January 45, we would have saved 1 million Jews. Had the British, Americans, and Canadians bombed the one railroad track going to Auschwitz, the one railroad trestle, and disrupted the killing of the Jews in the gas chambers by a week, 2 weeks each time, one Lancaster British bomber or one B-17 could have done it. It wouldn't have affected the outcome of the war. And one of the things that became clear to me over the years is that it wasn't only the Germans who were responsible for the Holocaust. It was the Muslims. It was the Saudis. Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, spoke about this a few months ago. That Hajj Amin al-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, was instrumental in convincing Hitler to kill the Jews. Now, you have to remember, the industrial elimination of the Jews was decided upon in January of 1942 in Wannsee, Berlin. The Germans wanted to get rid of the Jews. It's not that they didn't want to kill the Jews, they just didn't want the Jews around. So the Germans did the killing, the Muslims told the Germans to kill, and the Muslims told the Allies not to give visas. And so 7 million Jews were stuck behind Nazi lines, so the Germans came up with the Wannsee Agreement for the final solution. If America had had a Christian president in World War II, we could have saved at least 1, 2, 3 million Jews. But America had a socialist Democrat as president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And even later, Harry Truman, great guy, recognized state of Israel, he could have helped end the war sooner. It's very easy to have hindsight to understand politics. But I decided that night, April 1991, that I was going to work for a Christian revival in America, a Christian revival in Europe, a Christian revival everywhere in the world. Because if you don't have Christians, you have anti-Christians. Anti-Christians are those people who serve Mammon. And today what we see happening in Europe, what we see happening in America and Canada and Latin America, everything is dictated by money. Not by God, not by Bible, not by Jesus Christ, for those who are Christian. And unfortunately, my Jewish brethren in America, they side with these so-called liberals who have the blood of 6 million Jews on their hands. And I want to fast forward. I don't want to wait too much time on this. You all know we have a number of Holocausts taking place all over the world and have been taking place for decades. Does anyone here know what's happening in Africa? The killing of millions of our black brothers and sisters in Africa. Over decades, nobody cares. Because if the Muslims are killing the Jews, it's okay. If the Muslims are killing the blacks, it's okay. And now if the Muslims are killing the Christians, it's okay. Because you need their money, you need their oil. And now, Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany, we need the numbers, we need the immigrants. Because we're too busy aborting our children to have children. I was in Basel. You also have a 3-year jail sentence in Basel for saying that Allah is Satan and Islam is criminal psychosis. My family host there in Basel, Switzerland, one day picked me up at the airport. He was crying. He was preaching and he was crying. He said, we Europeans aborted 50 million children in Europe. So as a gift, God gave us 50 million Muslims. Because somebody has to work. We need young blood to work. And Europeans are aborting their children. We are looking today at a Holocaust taking place in the Middle East. Such churches as the Maronite Church, the Assyrian Church, the Armenian Church, we're in an Armenian restaurant now. Christianity is being erased in the Middle East. You know, I'm going to talk about this in the third segment, but I go to the Old City here, the Christian Quarter, and I meet with Christian, Arabic-speaking businessmen, and they kind of grab me in a friendly way. They grab my arm and say, why is it that Vladimir Putin of Russia is the savior? And the President of the United States is a Muslim terrorist bent on the destruction of Christianity in the Middle East. Why? I said, don't ask me. You know I agree with you. And for those of you who want, you can go to a short YouTube called Saudi Plant, P-L-A-N-T, made by a Southern Baptist pastor about me and my wife. And we proved it. President Obama is a Muslim. This is all by design. The presidents preceding Obama, they were not pro-Israel. They had to be pro-Israel for getting the vote or getting support in Congress, but every president in the United States that's still alive is bribed by the Saudis. When President Obama became president, Wall Street had fallen from 12,000 to 8,000. The index went down to 8,000. 2 months after President Obama became president, it jumped back up to 12,000. Was America's economy healed in 2 months? Or was there something artificially done to raise Wall Street back to 12,000? It's now hovering between 17 and 18,000. And my prediction is that Wall Street will go up to 25,000 very soon, because you have millions of Muslims pouring into the US legally, illegally, across the borders, through illegal jet charters into the US. And for the millions of Muslims, you have to build homes. When you build homes, you have a housing boom. A housing boom radiates in all directions. It is the primary motor of development of any economy. I spend most of my time while in the United States in Oklahoma, Texas, Missouri, Arkansas. You easily have room there for 50 to 100 million Muslims. You have sweet water, you have forests, you have raw materials to build homes. You're going to have exclusive Muslim communities popping up all over the US, and the Saudis will pay for it. So if the leadership of America goes to bed with the Saudi, Qatari, and other Islamic leaderships, the American economy will do well for now, but they go to hell in a handbasket. And you want to know something? Angela Merkel, I love her. I think she's a great chancellor, but I think she's misguided when she thinks that bringing in millions of Muslims into Germany is going to be good for Germany. And at some stage, you're going to have in Europe something called intifada. You already have no-go zones. But the point I'm saying is, this type of Islam is called Sunni Islam. I won't go into, I've got CDs and DVDs and books about who are the Sunnis and who are the Shiites. The Sunnis are the ones who do business with the West. There are two types of Islam. You have the revolutionary and the evolutionary Islam. 9/11 and terrorism, or the subways, the tube explosions in London, This is what we call the revolutionary Islam. Nobody likes that. And the so-called peaceful Muslims, who are the evolutionary Islam, they don't like it either because it gets in the way of their plans to take over the West through financial means. But the bottom line of every Muslim has to be taking over the world for the glory of Allah. So the Saudi king and the Qatari leadership and Turks and Egyptians and Muslims from all over the world, they know that the Christians are going to submit. Islam means submission. If they don't do it by terrorism, they'll do it by money, by oil, and by immigration, also known as hijrah. I looked at my clock. So this pretty much covers what type of world we're looking at. The Western world, including the Vatican, is solidly with the Sunnis, because the Sunnis are going to do business with them. Now, firstly, the Sunnis and the Shiites have been fighting each other, I won't say from day one, but from Caliph number 4. Abu Bakr, Uthman, and Omar were the first 3 caliphs. They are the fathers of the Sunnis. And Ali, the first cousin of Muhammad, marries his daughter Fatima. And they establish a dynasty. And then these people start beheading the followers of the first 3 caliphs. And then the first 3 caliphs decide to behead the Shiite or followers of Ali. And this has been going on for 1,400 years. There is no forgiveness in Islam. There will never be an end to this war. Their hatred can only end when one side is dead or when both sides are dead. Or the third possibility is when the Messiah fixes them. And I don't mean killing them. I'd never ever believed that killing Muslims is a solution. I love the Muslims. I want the Muslims to be saved. Amen. And you know what I say? But it only works in English. Bring them to the Lord, or they will bring you to the sword. Because our God is the Lord, and their God is the sword. And by the way, if they win, we all lose, including they. Because they kill each other, there's nobody left. Now, what I will say about the Shiites is that the Shiites are 15% of the total Muslims in the world. You have about 1.2 billion. 15% would be about 200 million. So you have about 1 billion Sunnis. The Sunnis outnumber the Shiites. Now, the Shiites are 50-50 with the Sunnis, where? In the Persian Gulf area, all the way to Lebanon, all the way to Turkey. So this is the perfect self-destruct mechanism that nobody can win. Okay, are you with me? So this is an intractable war. It is an unending war until one side defeats the other.
Well, we hope that you found the comments and observations of Avi Lipkin to be as thought-provoking and eye-opening as did our intercession team during our recent prayer convocation of our ministry in Jerusalem's Old City. To know what's happening in Israel, be sure to check out our news and commentary every day at our website, exploits.tv, where you can also receive our free print or online edition of Exploits magazine by request. Exploits ministry is based on Daniel 11:32, which says those who know God will be strong and carry out exploits. I want to ask you to please be a part of the media outreach, our humanitarian projects, and evangelism that we're called to worldwide. All the programs of the Jerusalem Channel are made possible by you who watch and visit our website. So thank you for your continued support. And please keep in touch with me through social media. Contending for the faith and praying always for the peace of Jerusalem. I'm Christine Darg. Shalom.